Okay, I think we're connected. Looks like the connection's okay right now. There's a last week. Sorry, there was no stream. What happened was a major winter storm, and we have satellite internet here. And if the sky is full of snowflakes and heavy clouds, then the signal is blocked, and we lost our internet for several hours. That overlapped with the time for the stream. But it looks good for today, so we'll start on time in just a minute or so. Or actually, I think it's time right now. Okay. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So, good evening, everyone. And what I'm planning to do as for the next several weeks will be somewhat in-depth look into the most basic of the teachings, the Four Noble Truths. And tonight's talk will be a general introduction to the Four Truths, and then we'll go into them one by one. The Four Noble Truths, the Ariya Satchang, are the most basic summary of the Buddhist teachings. They were first taught by the Buddha in the Dhammacakka Sutta, which was actually his first major sermon. Shortly after his awakening and his decision to, as prompted by Brahma Sahampati, his decision to go forth into the world and teach the Dhamma, he approached his former companions in asceticism, the five ascetics, and at first they were, when they saw him coming from a distance, they said, "There's that Gautama, the backslider. He gave up on asceticism and eat the milk porridge. He fell back into worldly ways. We should snub him." But when he got closer and they could see how radiant he was, they couldn't help themselves. They offered him marks of respect and had him seated in their circle, and he gave this sermon. He actually began, even before stating the Four Noble Truths, he began with a brief statement about the middle path, contrasting the former life of asceticism that he was leading as self-mortification with the village life, that is, immersion in worldly sensuality. And he said, both of these extremes are ignoble and do not lead to liberation. One should seek the middle path, which this is also a key idea in Buddhism, is the idea of the middle path or middle way, and has a number of different applications that he develops later. But at this time, it was the middle path between asceticism and sensuality. So the Buddha's way is to seek neither pleasure nor pain, but to live in equanimity. Then he immediately launched into this statement of the Four Noble Truths. And the Four Noble Truths we consider as being the essence of Buddhism, and that all the subsequent teachings that he gave for the next 40 years can be considered as commentaries on the Four Noble Truths. The whole of the Dhamma is really encapsulated in the Four Truths. And all the four truths relate to in one way or another, to the concept of dukkha. The first truth is the truth of dukkha. The second is the origin of dukkha. The third is the ending of dukkha. And the fourth is the way leading to the ending of dukkha. So we'll speak more about dukkha when next week, when I talk about the first noble truth. But just briefly here, dukkha is usually translated, as you all know, it's usually translated as suffering. That's in some ways a problematic translation because all phenomena are considered to be dukkha, but not all phenomena are suffering. However, in the context of the Noble Truth, suffering works fairly well, as we'll see next week when we talk about his statement, the definition of the First Noble Truth. Now, the four truths were not just were not merely doctrinal statements. They also had an aspect of practice associated with them. For each truth, the Buddha enumerated the action we should take in regard to it. You know, he assigned a kind of practice for each truth, and that's important to understand the differences here. The first truth, he said, the truth of dukkha, he said, should be thoroughly understood. And the Pali verb used here is parijanati. Janati means to know, and pari is a prefix that emphasizes or exaggerates the meaning. So thoroughly or completely, deeply understand. That's because the First Noble Truth is, in essence, a summary or a description of our condition, our situation in samsara, as conditioned, as being subject to birth and death, subject to conditionality. And it is within our power as sentient beings to understand that situation. It's not beyond our capacity, and we should make an effort to understand the situation we're in. The second truth is the truth of the origin of suffering, which is a craving or tanha, and it's a rather specific type of craving, which we'll get into on the lecture on Second Noble Truth. Here, the Buddha says we are advised or instructed to abandon that craving. You know? That's what we need to work towards, is to abandon the craving. So understand dukkha, abandon craving. And the third truth, the truth of the cessation of suffering, which is the realization of nibbana, or the unconditioned, the Buddha said is to be realized, or that's the common English rendering. The Pali verb is sachikaroti, and it could be understood as to develop or to make happen, to realize, to experience. So this is an important nuance here, the difference between First and Third Noble Truth. The first truth, dealing with the conditioned world, we have the capacity as rational beings to understand the conditioned world. But the third truth, which deals with the unconditioned, which deals with nibbana, it's beyond our capacity to understand it. We can't apply the verb parijanati to Third Noble Truth. It's beyond our rational comprehension. But what we can do is we can experience it. We can realize it. We can make it happen. We can make it be, which would be kind of a literal rendering of Satchikaroti. So here we have a stark difference between the first and third truth. The first truth being conditioned, the third truth being unconditioned. We could also say about first and second noble truth taken together is a statement of samsaric reality and the dependent origination that the Paticca in the 12 links is really a detailed explanation of how first and second noble truth work without going into third truth. Third truth is the ending of that. It's the breaking of the dependent origination. It's the realization or the penetration or the entering into of the unconditioned. The fourth truth is the way leading to the ending of suffering, the path, the eightfold noble path. Right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right energy, or right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, or right samadhi, sama samadhi. And the adjective here used, sama, is generally translated right, but it's not really meant as right as in English is right as opposed to wrong. So it's not really meant right in the sense of correct, but it means more something like pure, perfect, or complete. And the admonition here for fourth truth is to practice it, to walk the way that the Buddha has laid out in order to realize third truth. So it's the form of the Buddha's teachings, the stylistic form is always important, as well as the content or meaning. And it sometimes seems to people a bit curious or odd that the Buddha put them in this order. It would seem to many people to be a more reasonable order to have switched third and fourth truth. So you have the path, then you have the result of path. And that would make a kind of logical sense. But what has been suggested, and I think it's a sound suggestion, is that the Buddha was here using, as he often did in his teachings, he was using a form that was already known and existent in the culture and putting a new meaning to it, giving it a higher meaning. And the particular ordering of these four truths resembles the layout of Vedic medical books. When they would deal with a disease, they would first list the symptoms. So that's first truth. Here's the problem. Then they would discuss the cause of the disease, whether it's overeating or exertion or what it might be. That would be second truth, cause of suffering. And then the third section would deal with the prognosis. How is this disease curable or not? If it's not curable, is it maybe manageable? So this is the prognosis. So this is third truth. And then the fourth section would be the treatment. So the layout of the Four Noble Truths follows that order exactly. because it's makes sense because the ultimate disease is conditioned existence and the suffering that comes with conditioned existence. And the Buddha is saying, here's the problem, here's what causes it, and yes, there is a cure, there's a way out of it, and here's how you do it. So the order, makes sense in that context. In the final section of the Dhammacakka Sutta, after the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, one of the five, and these five incidentally became the first bhikkhus, one of the five, a man named Kondanyo, he declared, oh, now I know, now I see. That which is subject to arising is subject to ceasing. And the Buddha said, Kondanyo sees, Kondanyo knows. And then Kondanyo knows is Anyo Kondanyo, and that became his name afterwards, Anyo Kondanyo. And upon that proclamation, the Devas rejoiced, and the word or the news spread upwards through the cosmos from heaven to heaven, and the wheel of the Dhamma has been turned. The wheel of the Dhamma has been turned, and there was a great rejoicing throughout various realms of the cosmos. So it was an extremely significant event. Now this little episode is extremely important, and it has a lot of meaning to it. First of all, notice that Kondanyo statement, that which is subject to arising is subject to ceasing, is a true statement of Dhamma, but it does not follow necessarily logically from anything the Buddha had said in his first sermon. It was an independent statement of Kondanyo's. So what this signifies is that Kondanyo had, by listening to the Buddha's discourse, he had made an independent penetration into the Dhamma. And it's actually stated that he was the first stream winner, the first one whose Dhamma eye was opened. And what this means is that the Buddha's teaching had, not only had the Buddha been awakened, but his teaching had been successfully transmitted. And someone else, from hearing the Buddha's Dhamma, had attained to the first glimpse of the unconditioned. And this was a historically important event. In some ways, it's more important than the Buddha's own awakening, because there was a possibility, which the Buddha actually was contemplating, to not teach and to remain just enjoying the bliss of enlightenment. Then it would have been a simple one-off experience with no historical significance. But because the Dhamma was now successfully transmitted, the wheel of the Dhamma had been turned, meaning that it's now out in the world and is available for other beings. And it has, changed the history of the world. So this is what the Devas were rejoicing about, was that the wheel of Dhamma had been turned, and it can, and no one can turn it back. No Deva or Brahma or man or Mara can turn back the turning of the wheel. And from that simple episode in the forest near Savatthi, everything followed. The Sangha and the spread of the Dhamma all over India, then later into many other countries, and now all over the world. It all began at that moment. So that concludes the introduction. And in the subsequent weeks, we'll be going into the Four Truths one by one. So I'll now turn to the chat and see what questions you might have for me. There's a question. While meditating, I have come to this state where I realize or know that I have been disconnected from everything physically, mentally, and emotionally.